We need to stop this bisexual versus pansexual bullshit. You know, bisexual used to mean like two genders in one, like plants that are two genders in one, but the word changed its meaning and it became something clinical, kind of fucked up in clinical, and then it became something that was claimed by the community and made into something empowering. So then we've got the word pansexual, which came along, honestly, around the same time as the Freudian version of bisexual, this clinical version, this diagnosis of sexual deviance. But more recently, much more recently than the word bisexual, pansexual came to mean something more inclusive. Now, we like to think that pansexual just came about very recently, and it's this lovely, enlightened word which includes non-binary people, but actually very early on, and still today, it's used by people who actually just invalidate trans people's genders. I've met pansexual people who say, I'm pansexual because I have the potential to be attracted to people of any gender, and then I've met pansexual people who've said, I'm pansexual because I'm attracted to men, women, and transgender women. Well, aren't we terribly sophisticated in our sexuality? Very modern. The problem with that, for anyone who doesn't know, is by saying that trans women are not women, that is transphobic. But supposedly, on the whole, pansexual is something more pure and kind to non-binary people, whereas bisexual tends to be, traditionally, has been defined as men and women. Of course, if you look at pretty much any bisexual resource today, they will say two or more genders, not two genders. The fact that bisexual can be defined as more than two genders actually means bisexual can include pansexual. But unfortunately, most people in the world are not queer activists. So a lot of people say, I identify as bisexual because I'm attracted to both men and women. If you're gay, or if you're straight, and you are not attracted to trans people, then you don't get excluded from gay and straight. You're still gay and straight, you're just probably transphobic as well. There's no distinguishing label for a gay man who just doesn't accept trans men as men. But a lot of bisexuals just don't know that non-binary people exist. And I know that's awful, that sucks, but a lot of straight people and gay people also do not know that non-binary people exist. So unfortunately, a lot of bisexual people use exclusionary definitions when talking about their sexual orientation. But I would put money on the idea that if most bisexuals knew that non-binary people existed, they would include them in their definition. But it's become increasingly common for there to be this idea of like bisexual being this one sexual orientation and then pansexual being this beautiful pure orientation which includes non-binary people. Well, as I've mentioned, bisexual definitely includes non-binary people as well, and actually includes pansexual people as well. I don't think pansexuals and bisexuals are actually different. I think they're different words for the same sexual orientation. It is not unusual for sexual orientations to have multiple labels. You can identify as a lesbian, but also as gay and homosexual. This is nothing new, and sometimes these things carry different connotations and slightly different definitions for people. But at the end of the day, you can identify as all of these things at once, because essentially they refer to the same sexual orientation. Just to really fuck you guys up, I'm gonna admit that I identify as bisexual and pansexual at the same time. For me, using the word bisexual is just more universal. If you say bisexual, people get the general idea of what you're talking about. If you say pansexual, you're talking to a more specific group of people. And using pansexual can be like saying, by the way, I do include trans people, which, to be fair, I don't think I should have to do because I'm trans. I think that for other people, sometimes, yeah, people use bisexual to mean that they genuinely are only attracted to men and women and they are not attracted to non-binary people, although I think that those people are usually maybe a little bit transphobic. But at the same time, there are pansexual people who will say things like, I'm pansexual because I'm attracted to both real women and transgender women. Besides the fact that I just don't believe that these are two different sexual orientations, two different kinds of lived experiences, it's clear by the definition that pansexual fits into bisexual. Now, we made these words up. They're made up words that human beings made up and then the queer community redefined to make them ours. We make up labels, we define labels, we create communities using our labels. Identity is a very personal thing, but in terms of sexual orientation, and lived experience, I genuinely think pansexual and bisexual, it's just one group. Note, there has been some effort to give an umbrella term, such as multisexual, but like, is that gonna catch on? We make up the definition for bisexual. You know the word September comes from the word 7, right? Because it used to be the 7th month. It's not the 7th month of the year, right? The meaning of words change. It's almost like magic, but it's the magic of the mind. But whatever, right? You can say you're bisexual or pansexual, or both bisexual and pansexual. It makes no difference, we're still one community, right? Except that for some reason, someone wanted to make a flag for pansexual that was separate from the bisexual flag, even though they're like mostly the same colours and have the same number of colours with pretty much the same definition. And I'm just at a point where I can't stand seeing this idea of division between bisexuals and pansexuals, suggesting that there is a bisexual community and a completely separate pansexual community, and never the two shall meet. I just think this was a mistake. And I have a sneaking suspicion that it partially came out of internalized biphobia. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who identifies as bisexual now, who didn't at some point say, I don't like the word bisexual, I prefer just to be open. Because we're meant to hate the word bisexual. Our society does not take bisexuals seriously. Our society over-sexualizes bisexuals. By the time we're old enough to think that maybe we are bisexual, we often have this connotation that bisexual means something gross. So why wouldn't we jump at the chance to use a new word which most people have never heard of before? People don't have connotations for the word pansexual. This is a word which is fresh and we can make our own. But the reason people have negative connotations with the word bisexual is because they're biphobic and they're homophobic. I think that sometimes we give in to that biphobia when we say, I don't want to label myself as bisexual. And when I say that, I'm talking from experience. I've done this. I know many people who have done this. This is a common bisexual experience. So I think even if the creation of the word pansexual didn't come from that internalized biphobia, I think the popularity of it came at least partially from that. But the bisexual community has been around decades longer than the pansexual community. And I'm not trying to suggest that people should stop using the word pansexual, but I think the two communities are actually just one community using two different words. Now, it's hard to find validity when you're a bisexual person. Straight people don't think you're legit, gay people don't think you're legit, Martians don't think you're legit, nobody thinks you're legit, and that's really tough. It's seriously tough in a lot of ways. It's not just like, oh gosh darn it, people don't think I exist. Like, it's like our community is like suffering from like poor mental health and drinking problems and homelessness. Like, it's awful for us. And then in the midst of all this, we've separated into two separate communities? No, if you see a group of bisexuals insisting that the definition of bisexual is some transphobic, exclusionary bullshit, then you say, fuck you, that's wrong. When you see a transphobic space, you don't say, okay, you keep that space, I'll make another one. You say, no, this space has to be inclusive. And guess what? It is. People made it inclusive. It is not a legitimate sexual orientation to be transphobic. Bisexual can mean attraction to any human being. I don't think the word pansexual has been a useless identity. I think it brought to the front like a lot of good and important dialogue about the inclusion of trans people in our identities. And I'm so happy for anyone to identify as pansexual. I'll still use the word pansexual for myself sometimes. I just want us to stop pretending that we're two separate communities of people. We're not. The bisexual community struggles, and it's been around for decades fighting for recognition and validity, and in the midst of that, we've divorced into two communities. Dividing us makes us weaker, it doesn't make us stronger. I've had people literally say to me, I can't be included in your bisexual project because I'm a pansexual, so you're not including me. Of course I'm including you. Who told you? Who came along and told you that you don't get to be included in bisexual? I just kind of want to fight that person, you know? I'm sure this video is going to piss a lot of people off, but I am bisexual and pansexual, and I'm non-binary, and I'm a trans woman. So I'm allowed to talk about these things. Please don't invalidate my experience. All I'm saying is bisexual is pansexual and pansexual is bisexual. Don't let people divide us. We're a community of people who need to stick together because we need to fight for justice. And we can make justice happen as long as we stick together.